Thank you. Mr. Bloom has now managed to arrive, so are you ready to pose your question? 1 minute.
How rude.
Mr. Bloom? Yeah? Jeffrey?
How rude not to listen to the introduction of the Commissioner on that.
Thank you very much, and apologies for the rather belated arrival. Rather lucky to get here at all, actually, but there we are. Belated Happy New Year to you, Mr. Rehn. One of my concerns, a serious concern that I have, is that politicians have learnt very little from the recent failures that we've had, the recent crisis. I think it's worth pointing out that the beginning of this crisis was actually back in the 1970s with the Community Reinvestment Act, which is rather a poor piece of social engineering, which was brought in by Carter, which suspended the natural due diligence criteria for basic banking. This was a political initiative caused and aided and abetted by the central banks. And part of the conspiracy and the contagion spread across most of the industrialised world, with the notable exception of Australasia, who very sensibly run a different system. We had incompetent self-serving regulators asleep at the wheel. Indeed, sadly, they're still there. Assure me that you will enter your term of...
I'm sorry, it's only a minute for a question. And you've had your minute.
Sorry,
so, you haven't put a question yet.
The question is, I wonder if you could assure me that we are going to learn from the experience that we've had previously and deal with it accordingly. It's a problem of failure of politicians and central banks.
Okay, we won't be able to have a follow-up to that now, but if the Commissioner-designate wants to reply.
Thank you. I understand that you are posing a question concerning the package related to financial regulation and the banking sector and its relation to the lessons learned. In my view, it would be more than welcome if the legislative authority, that is the Council and the Parliament together, if you could adopt rather soon the legislative package on macro and microprudential legislation, because we need it urgently. And in my view, it is a big step forward to ensure that the financial regulation and supervision will be up to its task in Europe and hopefully also globally. That is the key challenge. And in fact, I was representing the Commission a few weeks ago in the Council, where I said very clearly to the Council that I would, in my current capacity as Enlargement Commissioner, replacing Margot Wallström, and I explained from the Commission point of view that we would welcome stronger binding powers in the field of financial regulation, macroprudential financial regulation, and I hope that we can together work in partnership to ensure that the end product will be such that it will really ensure effective financial regulation and supervision.
Thank you. If you can do a 20-second follow-up, you can do that.
Yes, and thank you very much for that answer. Yes, it was just a question really of understanding where the original problem came, and I regard that as to be misplaced social legislation in the 1970s, and that's what we need to recognise.
I will study my history books and take a look at the 1970s social legislation. And more seriously, I see a point, and of course there is a long history of many of the challenges in our society, but I think now the most urgent challenge in the field of tackling the financial crisis in the financial sector is to adopt this important legislative package by the Parliament and the Council.